but focus your energy on you, your progression, and your goals, with less comparison to what others are doing, how they're progressing, and how they're working out. You are the priority, and no two people are the same. We are back once again for the Renegade Master. And it is just me this time, not another collaboration unfortunately. And today we're going to talk about some bits and bobs. I'm going to slap you with some good educational knowledge because I feel like something needs to be said about this because of what's being promoted. Yes, we'll go with that. The video itself, we're going to talk about Erin Stern, someone who I have actually covered very briefly in the past, and somebody who's actually blocked me. And today we're going to look at her video of how to target the underbutt, the full workout glute ham tie-in. And the reason why we talk about this video is because terminology like underbutt is quite commonly used in the fitness industry, and I think it can lead to quite a lot of confusion potentially. So we're going to try and debunk some things along the way. If you like this video at any point, please let me know you like the video by liking the video. 1100 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal, so if we could reach that, that'd be bloody splendid, and I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. The growth on the channel recently has been utter madness. It has been absolutely crazy, and honestly I can't thank you enough. I go through the comments again. I know I'm a bit behind with the comments, but I promise I will catch up with all of them. I've just been a bit slow. And also on top of that, I see the Reddit. I see people linking me some Reddit threads where you're hyping me up in there, and I appreciate you for doing so. If you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week and I shall do so. Now I must wear a hat, and I like this one a lot because it has my name kind of on it. Not really. I'm still hunting through the baby section of hats at the moment. You see there's a H, Harry, yeah, no, yeah. I know, I like it too. I think it's kind of cute. I'm not as pretty as I thought I was. Let's crack on with the video and let's discuss a few bits and bobs that Erin is promoting. So a few things I want to quickly point out is, number one, Erin is a Miss Olympia champion. She's a winner. If you aren't aware, the Olympia is the top competition. There is nothing greater than the Olympia when it comes to like physique related competitions. People who use like Lifetime Natural Athlete as their kind of like USP, so unique selling point. You know my thoughts on that. I kind of covered that in a previous video, so I won't waffle too much longer on it and I won't bore you. We'll crack on with the content because there's a few things I want to address in this, and hopefully you learn something from this video.
You've been working towards sculpting your physique for a while. You've probably heard the term glute ham tie-in. This is an area that anatomically doesn't really exist. However, it is the area where the glutes meet the hamstrings. Well, today we have a workout that's geared towards shaping and building this area.
If the area anatomically doesn't exist, how do you then target it? I know what she's referring to. She's referring to essentially placing emphasis on the point in which the kind of higher region of the hamstrings, lower region of the glutes. Realistically, you cannot isolate single areas of muscles. You can merely place greater emphasis on it. So for example, like the hamstrings have 3 muscles, and then you can basically do movements that place greater emphasis on certain muscles, but you cannot merely isolate a singular muscle of the hamstring, for example. I think it's poorly worded.
Understand that if you're looking for muscle definition in this area, muscle definition in general is a function of leanness.
Yeah, no, she is completely right. To see more definition, one would typically have to get leaner, i.e. lose body fat. You're going to see 5 exercises throughout this video, and they're all going to be 3 to 4 sets of 12 to 15 reps. I'm going to mention why I may have a slight issue with that towards the end.
Our first exercise is a Smith machine kneeling squat. I love this exercise because it gives you added stability. You've got the stability of the Smith machine, and since you've taken the lower legs out of the equation, you've got added stability there. So you really just have to focus on using your glutes.
I'm going to be completely honest with you, and I think a lot of people might actually get upset with me for saying this, but personally, I don't think it's a particularly effective movement, especially when looking at the glutes. I think realistically, a hip thrust is going to be far, far better than anything like this. Biomechanically, this really isn't doing as much for the glutes as you might think, whereas a hip thrust is going to be doing a lot for the glutes, especially if you're shifting some heavy weights, which the hip thrust does allow you to do. So it's kind of for that reason I think this exercise is actually a bit of a wasted exercise.
Our next exercise is a cable reverse pull through. Now here I'm using the easy bar attachment, overhand grip, feet shoulder width apart, soft knees. Again, hinging at the hip.
Having a hip hinge movement when looking at kind of targeting the posterior chain, so the hamstrings and the glutes especially, is very important. And by hip hinge movement, you want to typically think of something like an RDL. Again, when looking at kind of how the muscle is working, what it's doing, etc., and how much load you're lifting, I think an RDL is a far better alternative to this, because essentially when you're looking at hip hinge movements, I would deem the RDL to probably be the top tier hip hinge movement. I think a lot of times movements like these get selected because they kind of look a bit cooler and they're maybe less intimidating, and sometimes a lot of people may get deterred by lifting free weights, because I do understand it can be quite intimidating for many, regardless of gender, so I do respect that. Just know that if you are trying to optimize results, which in this case is likely going to be the building of the hamstrings and the glutes, an RDL is going to be far superior to a movement like this. And don't be afraid to use straps. So like wrist straps to help with the grip. If you're trying to grow the hamstrings and glutes, you don't want your grip to be a limiting factor, because that will likely give out long before the hamstrings or the glutes do. So don't be afraid to strap up and almost remove grip as a limiting factor, so you can really overload, push a bit further, and take those glutes and hamstrings to, if not close to, failure.
Our next exercise is a dumbbell deadlift. Now here I'm taking a slightly wider stance, and you can really experiment with the stance here, but if you've got longer femurs, longer legs, you might want to go a little bit wider here. And I'm counterbalancing against the dumbbell.
The thing I'm going to say about this one is essentially it is like a deficit sumo deadlift. And I say deficit because her range of motion seems to be greater than a typical sumo deadlift, because obviously with the bumper plates and where the bar lies, it probably goes to about mid-shin or so. She's obviously going a bit lower here, hence deficit. Again, I think an RDL would be better. I think for the glutes, RDL is better than the sumo deadlift. I did kind of ponder that thought in a previous video, but then I have come to the conclusion that I think the RDL is far superior than the sumo for the glutes. You got to think about how the muscle's working here. There's nothing really kind of changing too much between this and a sumo deadlift. The muscles are doing the same thing. You're going through the very similar motion. The muscles aren't having to work any differently. The big thing that is changing here is how much weight you're able to shift. So with the dumbbell, realistically, you're likely going to lift a lot less weight than if you were to actually do a sumo deadlift with the barbell. So if the muscles aren't working any differently, but you're reducing the amount of load you can do, is that a good trade-off? And you can apply that to any other movement. If you're doing two movements in which the muscles are working in a very similar manner, if not the exact same manner, but one allows you to lift heavier than the other, always prioritize the movement that allows you to lift heaviest. Because like I said, nothing else is changing apart from the load used. So why would you want to incorporate or prioritize a movement that doesn't allow you to lift as heavy, thus reduces the amount of mechanical tension you can apply to the muscle, which again is a very important, if not one of the most important aspects to consider when looking at building muscle. I think the big two things there to consider are mechanical tension, weight shifted, load used, etc., which is then obviously improved through progressive overload, and also mechanical application. Are you taking the muscles through the correct range of motion? But again, personally, if you're going to do a dumbbell deadlift or a sumo deadlift, I would 100% choose the sumo deadlift. If you're looking at targeting or placing the most emphasis on the glutes or the hamstrings, I would choose the RDL over the sumo deadlift.
Next exercise is a tall box step up. And of course you can use a bench if you don't have a plyo box. And I like to hold on to something because it gives you a little added stability and it takes the focus away from having to balance.
I actually think the step up is actually not a bad movement. It's not one of my favorites, but I do think it can be quite an effective movement. What I would say with anything is you need to try and prioritize movements that actually allow you to shift sufficient weight. So a step up could be better if you are using dumbbells or something along those lines to then increase mechanical tension. She's getting some bloody solid range of motion there, which I do respect, I do appreciate. But yeah, I think the step up is good, but this could definitely be made better by adding weight to it and also not worrying too much about going slow throughout the entire movement. As you'll see through the reps, she's going very slow up and very slow down. 100% definitely control the eccentric portion of the rep, which is the way down, the negative. But when it comes to the concentric portion, which is the way up, try and move as fast as possible. So kind of slow down, fast up. Another thing to note very quickly, if you are doing like unilateral movements, so one side at a time, I would definitely usually recommend starting with your weakest side first. So if you're right leg dominant and left side is your weakest, I would probably say start with your left side first and then match reps with your stronger side.
Moving on to barbell good mornings. This is such a great exercise for targeting that area. Now you want your feet to be about shoulder width apart, weight pushed through the heels. You really want to think about pushing those hips back.
I find the good mornings, although the glutes and hamstrings are coming into it, I find it to be a lot more lower back dominant. I would prefer an RDL personally, but the good morning is not a bad movement. It's just not one of my favorites.
For building muscle, especially the glutes, focus on that mind-muscle connection.
So the mind-muscle connection I have covered a few times, and I don't think it's really as important as a lot of people think it is. So the mind-muscle connection essentially kind of refers to feeling the muscles working that you're trying to work. But ultimately, the stronger and stronger you get, therefore the heavier and heavier you lift, the less and less you're going to feel the muscle working in most cases, because you're having to place so much thought and emphasis on actually shifting the weight that is probably bloody heavy for you and take you to failure. It's like, how do you progressively overload mind-muscle connection? Do you squeeze a bit harder, think a bit harder? How you can really gauge and measure progressive overload, which is fundamental when trying to build muscle, is by lifting more. It's like when people say, I can't feel my glutes when I'm squatting. Well, if your glutes weren't working if you were squatting, then you wouldn't be able to squat. You would flop to the floor, sort of thing. So Erin spoke about doing 3 to 4 sets of everything, 12 to 15 reps. If you were taking the movement and the muscles to failure, if not bloody close to failure, as you should be doing if you're looking to optimize the building of muscle, and let's say you do your first set, you get 12 and that's failure, realistically you're not going to be able to get 12 in the next set. And if you can get 12 in the next set, that first set probably wasn't hard enough. So what I like to do typically is maybe, let's say, 1 or 2 top sets of 6 to 10 reps where it's bloody heavy. Let's say I get 9 on the first set. I'll probably get 7, maybe 8 if I'm lucky on the second set, because I've taken it to failure. And then I'll drop it by about 20%. And then I'll shoot for 1 back-off set of 12 to 20 reps. Again, to failure. So you're covering many rep ranges, but you're also not really limiting yourself to a rep range you may not be able to stay within for 4 sets. So if you're doing 4 sets of 12 to 15, let's say you get 15 on the first set, you're lucky to get 14 on the second, 13 on the third, and 12 on the fourth, if you're really lucky. Realistically, it'll probably be 15, 13, 11 or 12, maybe 9 to 10. That's probably how it would play out. So again, give yourself a bit more of range. Play around with some different rep ranges too. It's good stuff for the building of muscle, and that's what we like to see. Will these movements actually shown throughout this workout video do something? Absolutely, they would likely do something, yes. Are they optimal? I'm probably going to say no. I've kind of given a few better alternatives. Like I said, you've got the hip thrust, bloody fantastic. You've got the RDL, also bloody fantastic. You've got something like the dumbbell split squat, for example. Again, another bloody fantastic movement. Things along those lines would be far better alternatives than the movements that she has presented throughout this workout. I know a lot of people may come at me with the argument of, but she does it and she's Miss Olympia. The thing you have to remember is, just because it works for her doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal. Erin is a genetic elite. If you're on the Olympia stage, you are genetically top sourced. You are top dog. You know, you're up there. You are the hat of all hats sort of thing, like that kind of quality, that caliber. And realistically, she could probably sneeze and get jacked from doing so. I know Erin works very hard. I know she absolutely hammers her training, she hammers her diet, she hammers all aspects of that kind of world because it's her job and she probably bloody loves it. But what I'm trying to say is, these people are hyper responders. So they respond abnormally well to resistance training, and they respond abnormally well to a lot of other things, oftentimes PEDs as well, and they also have an insane work ethic. But again, just because it works for them doesn't mean it will work for you. You are you, and Erin is Erin. Despite the fact that what I'm saying is very much discussing about what could be deemed optimal, I will always preach, do what's best for you. If you can't stick to it, it's probably not best for you and therefore not optimal for you. At the end of the day, I just want you to be happy and healthy, and I'm about to start singing Good For You, but I'm not going to because no one wants to hear me sing, although it is an absolutely banging tune. Focus less on what these people are doing. Sure, gather information, get some tips, get some knowledge, see what they're doing, see if you can incorporate it to improve your workouts wherever it may be, provided it's good information, not misinformation, but focus your energy on you, your progression, and your goals, with less comparison to what others are doing, how they're progressing, and how they're working out. You are the priority, and no two people are the same. But again, those are merely my thoughts and opinions. But now, obviously, we must crack on with the common question of the week. If you can't target a specific place to lose fat, then why do people do ab workouts or arm workouts, for example, after saying that you can't target a specific area? So I think what they're kind of asking here is, if you can't spot reduce fat, why do targeted workouts? Because although you can't choose where you lose fat, you can essentially choose where you gain muscle. If you want to lose fat, you enter a calorie deficit in which you are expending more calories than you're consuming, and the workouts you do aren't gonna change where you lose that fat. That's determined by your body. Because fat loss and muscle gain are very different things. But that's it. That's the video. 1,100 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal. So if we could shoot for that, that'd be bloody amazing. On top of that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel, in addition to clicking the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. Got to turn those notifications on. If you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my wicked hat and wild spoiler, because I am a car and this makes me look bloody aerodynamic right now. And thank you for tolerating the video.